The ego is the system that runs your sense of self. It is made out of thought patterns, emotions, and behavioral loops, and the stories that try to hold it all together. Left unchecked, it creates endless existential searching, chronic disconnection, and the persistent sense that something is wrong. The goal of my videos is clarity, to see your identity and its contradictions for what they are, named precisely, to finally understand what it is that we're all running away from. I help people moving through deeply existential questions and identity crises. Often an event happens in our lives that completely deconstruct our sense of self and our sense of being a definable person in, space-time. But what I don't often talk about is what happens when you truly move from this existential crisis point through real dissolution into the nature of awareness. And the reason I don't talk about this much is because I feel like I would create some sort of, snake oil salesman guru vibe the moment I give you all the benefits that this sort of integration has. Because it sounds just too good to be true. Right now, in my own Ego Architecture Audit PDF, I simply state the facts of what is the process going to be like, how do you need to be like in order for this to serve you, and then I move you through it. And if you're clever, you kind of get the implication of how much this can actually do for you. But I don't sell it actively in that I tell you all of the benefits that this can have. First, because it's kind of individual and might take some time depending on how your ego is constructed. But also, if I actually tell you how much freedom is possible in your own psychology, you likely wouldn't believe me if you're suffering a lot. Because I remember when I was deep into suffering, and I started to hear about, this idea of enlightenment or a state without suffering or all of the stuff. Like a part of the ego wishes for this so much to be true, and another part thinks this must be wishful thinking. It cannot be the case that, somebody has the answers and can just give them through me in a protocol in a PDF. And the process is a natural process. That is the movement towards psychological wholeness. But right now in our modern society, this is really rare. It is difficult to find people who actually move through this process of psychological wholeness and then can report to you how their experience is like. Because in the meantime, you have 1,000, if not 1,000,000, if not infinite ego traps in the way that will block you moving to the deep end of this transformation, where you are actually free from psychological suffering. If you go through this process, you will end up in moments where you build a spiritual identity, where you have a new egoic identity, where you think you found the nature of reality, but you're in step 1 or out of 500, where you want to compare yourself or your understanding with other people. There's a lot of philosophy and ontology that gets in the mix. And I think to describe how difficult it is to imagine how to get to this state, just think about every person you know and how much opinions they have. And now I'm telling you that in order for you to be psychological whole, like fully, you need not to be attached to even one singular opinion. This is not the same as not having an opinion or not being able to state an opinion or state a fact about reality or state something that is truthful, but to literally not have an opinion in the classical sense of the word, where you are attached to something and believe it to be true and part of your identity. Like, I can have an opinion about a movie, like Everything Everywhere All at Once is one of my favorite movies of all time. And then this is an opinion. And if you're going to say that the movie sucks, I can banter with you and talk to you about the movie. And I can even, get emotionally invested in this conversation. But at no point is my actual identity going to be bothered by the fact that you don't like the movie or you have some other opinion than mine. And I'm using this movie, of course, as a stand-in for any possible opinion that you have. It is not possible to disagree in an opinion and genuinely offend me. And most people who are, somewhat healthy in their minds, you can notice that they are also less sensitive to being offended. And when you're completely psychologically whole, this possibility to be hurt by words goes to near zero. And when you start to understand, so losing my sense of self and losing my ego basically means I become not offendable or I become very peaceful no matter what people say, then it becomes quite easy to pretend that this is the case and you never get hurt. which is precisely the thing you shouldn't be doing if you're investigating the nature of yourself. I know that if I'm in a family situation and somebody were to insult me in my face and be very rude to me, depending on what moment it is, it might legitimately bother me because I would think it is rude, and I would still assert myself and put my own boundaries into place. There's a lot of not wanting to set boundaries for people who think themselves to be, very spiritually minded, because they're supposed to be open, and therefore you're not supposed to have strong opinions or take strong boundaries. But this is completely wrong. You just likely have less need to set boundaries, but boundaries are extremely important for your what you're comfortable with in your own individuality. Being bothered by somebody being rude or mean to you is a very natural response. You're not supposed to just let people disrespect you for no reason. But if you're psychologically whole, you'll not be offended and it won't ruin your day. It might be something that slightly bothers you, and then you keep moving on with your life. Now, what also happens if you have this sense of wholeness is that you likely are very fine being alone. You likely are not looking out for a relationship or for new friendships. And it's not that if you are psychologically whole, you are supposed to be happy alone all the time if you are naturally an extroverted person. If you're naturally an extroverted person and like to go to parties and like to meet people, this can still be a natural part of just how you have been conditioned and how your mind functions. But for most people, relationships are not just a good time. They fulfill a lot of needs. A need to be seen. A need to be understood. A need to be feel part of a group. All of these parts or aspects of the human psyche might be deemed as normal for humans who want to be in tribes. But a lot of it is egoic conditioning. It is the feeling that if you don't have friends or don't have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, you are actually less valuable in society. And if you don't have a good career and are successful in that career, then you also have not made anything of yourself, and you are supposed to be somebody and be successful in that. And you failed in that too. All of these are egoic narratives that once you truly dissolve into the nature of yourself and understand who you are, completely drop. You do not worry anymore about what the meaning of your life is, what your life purpose is, and what you're supposed to accomplish in this life, because you are fine. You are completely okay being who you are, and you see yourself for who you are without any of these social narratives at play. So if I now were to tell you what are the benefits of my work, I can tell you that you become completely emotionally independent from other people. You are completely independent from your goals and desires, and there's nothing you need, and without any circumstances from outside, except of course survival, like you need to feed yourself, but you are completely content and satisfied with your existence, no matter what the external circumstances are. Now, if I am selling this, it sounds like I'm selling like the pill to perfection or the pill to, enlightenment really. And if I'm honest about what I'm doing, this is literally what I am doing. It just takes more than, wanting to be slightly curious about this. You want to really find out the nature of self, the nature of existence, and how all of these ego mechanisms operate. And if you dedicate your life studying this stuff and get also some information about what did old mystical traditions say, what does modern psychology say, what does modern science say, there's a huge convergence where every religion in the world and every philosophy in the world and every psychological framework in the world converge in saying the same thing. There's a separation in your sense of identity conditioned by society and people around you. And when this sense of conditioning dissolves, you feel an immense amount of existential peace. And the amount to the peace that is possible, like how good you can actually feel in your day-to-day life, is what is incredible. It is incredible how you can basically remove all sense of anxiety, all sense of worrying, all sense of sadness, all sense of anger, all sense of frustration, all sense of existential pondering, all sense of meaning and purpose, and be completely satisfied in every single moment of your life, because you now are identified or understanding yourself as empty awareness, unconditioned from existential or external circumstances. Now, the ego hears that and fantasizes about being some sort of superhero or some, enlightened being that has some kind of superpower. But I'd argue that it is none of that. It is psychological health. It is the ultimate psychological health when every conditioning of the ego has been dissolved. And how much of the ego is there to dissolve, and how much the ego is a mechanism that tries to lie to you and try to trick you into believing things that are untrue in order to survive. This is what leads to this psychological wholeness. And most of modern society doesn't or can't do that because almost everybody has some sort of belief system or ideology or framework from which they are attached to. Now, to be clear, this is not all or nothing. You can be very attached to your materialistic framework, or you can be very attached to being a Christian, or you can be very attached to being a Muslim and still be psychologically pretty whole, in the sense that you are not seeking some sort of existential satisfaction. There's a lot of depth to this, and what I'm talking about is more the deep end of it, how much you can really reduce suffering. And for me personally, I can just say that how much I used to suffer just 5 years ago and how my day-to-day is now, there might be completely different lives. I did not thought it is possible to be this content all the time. And still, if now a war were to break out and my family is in danger or somebody dies, then it would quite be brutal, right? It's not something that I would just scoff at or pretend that it doesn't matter. Of course it matters, and I prefer it not to be the case. And reality might show me deeper levels of suffering that is possible that I am also not aware of. But I'm not worried about it. I'm not having an existential argument with the nature of reality about it. I just understand it as a part of the possibility space that we're in and kind of the costs of the conditionings that we have been running for a long time. Another crucial point is also the question of death. I, for example, have already mourned the death of my parents, although my parents are quite healthy and alive, and I'm very happy that they're healthy and alive. But I've thought about their death, and through meditation and also some, let's say mystical experience, I have cried about their own death way before it has actually happened. I mean, they're probably still 30, 40 years ahead of them. But I had to process the nature of death as like a thing that is going to happen to me and everybody around me before it has actually occurred, because there's a lot of egoic conditioning attached to it. Now, if my parents were to die, I'm sure there would be a lot of suffering that would open up for me that I'm not aware of right now. There's just not this resistance towards it. There's a lot of love and compassion for my parents, but also a lot of understanding that this is just how things work and how nature works, that it is an endless recycling and you're not going to escape the process. And any sort of part of you that says that you can somehow escape death or make death not be as real as it actually is egoic delusion and requires to feel into it. If there's something in your experience, be it pondering death of yourself or a family member or a past event that is so hard to revisit, then this is a huge part of egoic friction, because you will always have a part of your mind that is being bent by your own shadow, your own unconscious. You don't want to see what is possible in reality or what has already happened to you in your own lifetime and try to brush it away. But the moment you brush something away, you don't accept it. And if you don't accept it, you can't integrate something. The only way to actually move on with something that has happened to you is to experience in the present moment. Letting go something in the past is experiencing it in the present moment, because this is how the body processes and integrates this stuff. And it's very important to stretch that it is a somatic, physical, nervous system process that leads you to the sense of dissolution. It sounds very mystical and magical, and it feels this way. I swear it really can feel extremely trippy and surreal at times. But it is a part of just, nature, that you can, as a human, recognize the infinity of what existence is and not collapse and become crazy in the process. I'm still just scratching the surface of all the immense benefits that this deep psychological work entails. if I wanted to be, very unhinged about it, I could definitely be, maybe for like a future era of mine. But to me, it's always important to keep people grounded and, not attach a guru identity to anybody, because it's the exact thing that blocks you from, dissolving into the sense of wholeness. As long as you have a sort of hierarchy in your mind, you can see where your ego is still playing games. If you believe somebody to be superior than you, then you have an ego that is still comparing and contrasting. So you're not dissolving and seeing everything as equal or just as phenomena. And it is still natural to understand when somebody has more expertise than you in a topic or has been more advanced in this process. Like, it is completely fine to recognize that I've done a process and went pretty far deep into it, but it doesn't mean that my life has more value than yours, or I'm somehow, spiritually superior than you. Because the way I am looking at things is that I'm as much as a person as anybody else is a person, and there's no value judgment whatsoever to be made except from like egoic madness. To recognize authority and have a healthy relationship with this authority, is one of the main tenets of what makes you whole. Because having a complicated relationship with authority is exactly this egoic sense that you are not good enough and something needs fixing. And it also creates the sense that there's no way you could possibly fix it, because reality is so much superior and other people are so much superior than you are, which, is a delusion. You are as valuable as anybody else is. There's a huge amount of prosperity, love, and compassion inside of you. And if you liberate it and move through the pain, you can find yourself at peace.